My name is Victoria Sterling, and I'm about to tell you the most satisfying revenge story you'll ever hear. 3 years ago, I was the perfect wife to what I thought was the perfect husband. Today, I'm a millionaire, and he's living in his mother's basement. But let me start from the beginning, because the devil is always in the details. I met Marcus when I was 25, fresh out of law school, and working at a prestigious firm in Manhattan. He was 32, charming, successful, and owned a thriving tech startup that specialized in digital marketing solutions. Marcus had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when he spoke to you. His dark hair was always perfectly styled, his suits were custom-made, and he drove a Tesla Model S that he'd upgraded twice since buying it. Our first date was at this upscale rooftop restaurant overlooking Central Park. He ordered wine that cost more than my monthly student loan payment, and when I mentioned it, he just laughed and said, Victoria, beautiful women deserve beautiful things." I should have seen the red flag right there, the way he thought money could solve everything, could buy anyone. But I was young, ambitious, and honestly, a little swept away by his confidence and success. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. The proposal was everything you'd see in a movie: a private dinner on a yacht, a 5-carat diamond ring, and a photographer hidden nearby to capture my surprised reaction. Marcus was always about the image, the perfect Instagram moment, the story that would make others envious. Even then, some part of me knew it was more about his ego than his love for me, but I pushed those thoughts away. Our wedding was featured in 3 different luxury magazines. Marcus spared no expense. We're talking about a $200,000 celebration at the Plaza Hotel with 300 guests, most of whom were his business contacts. I wore a custom Vera Wang dress, and the flowers alone cost more than most people's cars. Looking back, I realized that wedding was Marcus showing off his success, and I was just another expensive accessory. The first year of marriage was good, or at least I thought it was. Marcus worked long hours building his company, Sterling Digital Solutions. Yes, he named it after my last name, which I kept, another one of his romantic gestures that was really about branding. I was working at the law firm, specializing in corporate contracts and intellectual property law. We bought a penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side, went on expensive vacations to Dubai and the Maldives, and from the outside, we looked like the perfect power couple. But Marcus had secrets. Big ones. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared about 18 months into our marriage. I started noticing small things. Marcus would get text messages at weird hours and immediately flip his phone face down. He'd take calls in another room, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked about it, he'd say it was just business, always business. He started working even later, sometimes not coming home until 2 or 3 a.m., claiming he was closing deals with international clients in different time zones. I'm a lawyer, trained to notice inconsistencies and ask the right questions. So when Marcus told me he was flying to Los Angeles for a 3-day conference, but I found a hotel receipt from Las Vegas in his jacket pocket, I knew something was wrong. When I confronted him about it, he had this smooth explanation about how the conference was moved last minute, and he was embarrassed about spending our money on gambling, so he didn't want to tell me. He even showed me photos from what looked like a legitimate business dinner. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly. Because admitting that Marcus was lying meant admitting that the life I'd built was built on lies too. The second incident happened a month later. Marcus came home with scratches on his back that he claimed were from playing basketball with his college friends. But Marcus hated sports, had never played basketball in the entire time I'd known him, and his college friends lived in different states. When I pressed him on which friends specifically, he got angry, not defensive, but genuinely angry, and accused me of being paranoid and controlling. That's when he started turning it around on me. Classic manipulation tactics that I should have recognized, given my legal training, but when you're emotionally invested, you miss things. He'd say things like, Victoria, your jealousy is becoming a problem, or I'm working 16-hour days to build our future, and instead of supporting me, you're interrogating me like I'm a criminal. He was good at making me feel guilty for questioning him, making me feel like I was the one damaging our marriage with my suspicious nature. So I backed off, tried to be more supportive, more understanding. I threw myself into my work and told myself that this rough patch was normal, that all marriages went through phases like this. But the universe has a way of revealing the truth, even when we're trying our hardest to avoid it. It was a Thursday evening in March when everything changed. Marcus had told me he was having dinner with potential investors, and I was working late at the office on a complicated merger case. Around 9 p.m., I realized I'd left an important file at home that I needed for a meeting the next morning. So I took a cab back to our apartment, planning to grab the file and return to the office. I used my key to enter quietly, not wanting to disturb Marcus if he'd come home early and was on a business call. The apartment was dimly lit, with soft music playing from the living room. I assumed Marcus had come home and was relaxing, maybe having a drink while reviewing presentation materials. I was wrong. So very wrong. As I walked down the hallway toward my home office, I heard voices. Not Marcus on a business call, but Marcus and a woman, laughing intimately. My heart started pounding, but I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a female investor, maybe they'd moved the meeting location to our apartment for privacy. But then I heard her voice more clearly, and I recognized it immediately. It was Sophia Chen, my closest friend since law school, my maid of honor, the woman who'd helped me pick out my wedding dress and had been at our apartment for dinner just 2 weeks earlier. I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to my husband and my best friend talking in low, intimate voices about how they needed to be more careful, about how guilty they both felt, about how complicated everything had become. And then I heard something that made my blood turn to ice, Sophia saying, I know this is wrong, but I've been in love with you since before you married her. Marcus's response was even worse. I married Victoria because she was perfect on paper, smart, beautiful, from a good family. But what we have is real. She's so focused on her career that she barely notices when I'm gone anyway. I don't remember making the conscious decision to move closer, but suddenly I was at the edge of the living room, looking through the gap where the French doors weren't completely closed. And there they were, on my couch, in my home, wearing my wedding gifts of matching robes that Marcus and I had received from his mother. They weren't just having an affair. They were comfortable, familiar, like they'd been doing this for a long time. Sophia was curled up against Marcus's chest, playing with his hair, while he traced patterns on her arm. It was intimate in a way that spoke of deep emotional connection, not just physical attraction. I watched for maybe 30 seconds before Sophia looked up at Marcus and said, when are you going to tell her? We can't keep doing this forever. Marcus sighed and replied, I know. I've been thinking about it. Maybe after the Henderson deal closes next month. Once that money comes in, I'll have enough set aside to make the divorce less financially devastating. Sophia laughed, actually laughed, and said, you mean less financially devastating for you? Victoria's smart enough to take you for everything you're worth. That's why I need to be strategic about this, Marcus said. I've been moving assets around, setting up accounts she doesn't know about. By the time I file for divorce, she won't be able to touch the majority of my wealth. I'd heard enough. Actually, I'd heard more than enough. But I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I quietly left the apartment, sat in my car for 2 hours crying and thinking, and then went to a hotel. See, here's the thing about being a lawyer who specializes in corporate contracts and asset protection. I know exactly how to find hidden money and how to protect legitimate interests. And here's the thing about being a woman who's just discovered that her entire marriage is a lie. I was about to become very, very motivated to use those skills. I didn't go home for 3 days. I told Marcus I was staying at my sister's place in Boston to help her with some family legal issues. Meanwhile, I was actually holed up in a suite at the Marriott, using my laptop and legal databases to research everything I could about Marcus's business, his finances, and my rights in a divorce. What I found was shocking, even by my standards. Marcus hadn't just been cheating on me emotionally and physically. He'd been cheating on me financially for over a year. Remember those international clients he was supposedly meeting with during his late nights? Those were meetings with financial advisors, helping him move money into offshore accounts. The Las Vegas trip wasn't about gambling. It was about setting up a shell company in Nevada where he'd been parking profits from his business. But Marcus had made a crucial mistake. When we got married, I'd helped him restructure his company for better tax advantages and liability protection. I'd drafted most of the corporate documents myself, as a wedding gift. Which meant I was listed as the corporate secretary and had legal access to all company financial records. Over those 3 days, I downloaded every financial document, every bank statement, every contract, and every email I could legally access. I discovered that Sterling Digital Solutions was worth significantly more than Marcus had ever told me. We're talking about nearly $3 million in annual revenue, with assets worth over $8 million. I also discovered that Marcus had been planning his exit strategy for months. He'd been systematically moving money out of our joint accounts and into accounts I couldn't access. He'd changed the beneficiaries on his life insurance policies. He'd even started the paperwork to remove my name from the deed to our apartment. But the most infuriating discovery was a series of emails between Marcus and Sophia that went back over 6 months. They weren't just having an affair, they were planning their future together, and that future explicitly involved destroying me financially and emotionally. In one email, Sophia had written, I feel bad about Victoria sometimes, but then I remember how condescending she can be about her career, like she's so much smarter than everyone else. Maybe this will humble her a little. Marcus had replied, Victoria's smart about law, but she's naive about business and relationships. By the time she figures out what's happening, we'll be living in the Hamptons house, and she'll be fighting for scraps. They had been planning to not just divorce me, but to humiliate me, to take everything I'd helped build, and to make me look like the fool who never saw it coming. That's when I stopped crying and started planning. You see, Marcus was right that I was smart about law, but he was wrong about me being naive about business. What he didn't know was that my specialty in corporate law included forensic accounting and asset recovery. I'd spent 3 years helping clients track down hidden assets in complex divorce cases. I knew every trick he was trying to pull because I'd seen them all before. And I was about to turn the tables in a way that would make his betrayal look like amateur hour. When I finally came home, I acted like nothing had happened. I told Marcus I'd missed him, asked about his investor meetings, and even suggested we plan a romantic weekend getaway. He was so confident in his deception that he actually seemed relieved, probably thinking he'd bought himself more time to move assets around. But while Marcus thought he was playing chess, I was playing 3-dimensional chess with pieces he didn't even know existed. My first move was to secure my own financial position. I opened a separate bank account and started redirecting my salary there. I also began photographing and copying every important document in our apartment: financial statements, insurance policies, property deeds, everything. I created a digital archive of our entire financial life together. My second move was to start gathering evidence of the affair. I hired a private investigator, not to catch them in the act, I'd already seen enough, but to document the scope and duration of their relationship. What I learned was that Marcus and Sophia had been involved for almost 8 months, meeting regularly at hotels, restaurants, and even taking a weekend trip to Martha's Vineyard while I thought Sophia was visiting her parents in California. My third move was the most strategic. I started positioning myself to take control of Sterling Digital Solutions. Remember, I was the corporate secretary, which gave me certain legal rights and responsibilities. More importantly, I'd written the original corporate structure in a way that protected the company from exactly the kind of asset hiding Marcus was trying to do. There were clauses in the corporate bylaws that he'd forgotten about, clauses that I'd included to protect our mutual interests in case of emergency. One of those clauses stated that if the CEO, Marcus, engaged in any activity that could jeopardize the company's reputation or financial stability, the corporate secretary, me, could call for an emergency board meeting and potentially assume temporary control of operations. Financial fraud, hidden assets, and undisclosed conflicts of interest definitely qualified as activities that could jeopardize the company. But I needed more ammunition, and I needed to be absolutely certain of my legal position before making my move. So I did something that Marcus would never have expected. I started working late at the office legitimately, building the strongest possible case for my own future while pretending to be the oblivious wife. During this time, Marcus became more careless. He was staying out later, being less creative with his excuses, and I even caught him texting Sophia while we were having dinner together. When I asked who he was texting, he said it was a work stuff and didn't even bother to put the phone away. The final straw came 6 weeks after I discovered the affair. Marcus announced that he needed to go to San Francisco for a week-long conference, and he'd be completely unreachable because it was an intensive retreat-style event with no outside communication allowed. I knew it was a lie. There was no conference. I'd already confirmed through my private investigator that Marcus and Sophia were planning a romantic getaway to Napa Valley, staying at a $1,200 per night resort and spa. That's when I decided it was time to execute my plan. While Marcus was in California living it up with my former best friend, I was in New York dismantling his entire life. First, I called an emergency board meeting of Sterling Digital Solutions. As corporate secretary, I had the authority to do this, especially with evidence of financial misconduct. The board consisted of Marcus, myself, and 3 outside investors who'd helped fund the company's expansion. I presented them with a comprehensive dossier documenting Marcus's hidden assets, his attempts to defraud the company by diverting profits, and his violation of several clauses in his employment contract, including a morality clause that prohibited activities that could damage the company's reputation. The investors were furious. Not only had Marcus been lying to me, he'd been lying to them about the company's true financial position. They'd been considering a major additional investment based on financial projections that Marcus had manipulated by hiding how much money he'd been siphoning off. By unanimous vote of the remaining board members, Marcus was removed as CEO, and I was appointed as interim CEO pending a full investigation of the company's finances. But that was just the beginning. As the new CEO, I had access to everything, every account, every contract, every business relationship that Marcus had built. And what I found was that Sterling Digital Solutions was actually in an even stronger position than I'd realized. Marcus had been understating the company's success to justify paying himself lower official salaries while moving money through unofficial channels. The company was sitting on nearly $2 million in cash, had contracts worth another $5 million over the next 2 years, and owned intellectual property that was worth significantly more than Marcus had ever disclosed. While Marcus was getting couples massages in Napa Valley, I was restructuring the entire company, bringing all the hidden assets back into legitimate corporate accounts, and positioning Sterling Digital Solutions for a major expansion. I also filed for divorce. But not just any divorce. I filed a fault-based divorce citing adultery, financial fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. I had photographs, financial records, hotel receipts, private investigator reports, and email evidence documenting everything Marcus had done. More importantly, I filed for immediate temporary spousal support and a temporary restraining order preventing Marcus from accessing or transferring any marital assets until the divorce was finalized. Marcus found out about all of this when he tried to use his credit card to pay for dinner on his romantic getaway and discovered that the card had been frozen by court order. He called me from the restaurant, absolutely furious, demanding to know what I thought I was doing. "I'm protecting my interests," I told him calmly. "The same way you thought you were protecting yours by hiding money and sleeping with my best friend." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. Then, "How long have you known?" "Long enough," I replied. "Long enough to make sure you can't hurt me anymore." Marcus flew back to New York the next day, but by then it was too late. I'd changed the locks on our apartment, which was legally mine to do, since the restraining order prevented him from returning to the marital residence. I'd also changed all the passwords on our shared accounts and had removed his access to the Sterling Digital Solutions offices. When he tried to contact Sophia for support, he discovered that she'd been served with a subpoena to testify in our divorce proceedings. She'd also been informed by her law firm that her involvement in my marital breakdown represented a significant conflict of interest, and she was being asked to take an indefinite leave of absence. Sophia called me, crying, begging me to be reasonable and not to destroy her career over a mistake. A mistake? I laughed. Sophia, this wasn't a mistake. This was 8 months of deliberate betrayal. You helped him plan to financially destroy me. You participated in emotional and financial abuse. The only mistake here was thinking I was too naive to figure it out. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. See, Marcus had made the crucial error of underestimating not just my intelligence, but my connections. During my years practicing corporate law, I'd built relationships with some of the most powerful people in New York's business community. And when word got out that Marcus Sterling had tried to defraud his own company and cheat his wife out of millions, those relationships became very valuable. 3 of Sterling Digital Solutions' biggest clients were companies I'd helped with legal issues over the years. When they learned what Marcus had done, they were appalled, not just by the personal betrayal, but by the business ethics implications. How could they trust someone who'd steal from his own wife and company? 2 of those clients immediately terminated their contracts with Sterling Digital Solutions, but then offered to renew them directly with me as the new CEO. The 3rd client actually increased their contract value by 40%, saying they had more confidence in the company's future under my leadership. Within 2 weeks of taking over as CEO, I'd replaced Marcus's lost salary with new revenue and had positioned the company for the most successful quarter in its history. But the personal revenge was even sweeter. Marcus had to move back in with his mother in Queens because he no longer had access to any of the money he'd been hiding, which was now frozen by court order, and couldn't afford an apartment in Manhattan. His mother, a devout Catholic woman who'd always been cool toward me, was absolutely horrified when she learned what her son had done and actually called to apologize on his behalf. Sophia lost her job at the law firm. Not officially because of the affair, but because several of her clients requested different representation when word got out about her questionable judgment in personal matters. In the legal community, reputation is everything, and Sophia's reputation was destroyed. The private investigator I'd hired had also uncovered something interesting. Marcus and Sophia's relationship had been rocky from the beginning. They'd been fighting frequently about Marcus's reluctance to leave me, about money, and about whether they actually had a future together. The romantic Napa Valley getaway had actually been a last-ditch attempt to save their relationship. When the pressure of the divorce, the business takeover, and their respective professional consequences mounted, their relationship crumbled completely. Sophia blamed Marcus for not being honest about his financial situation. Marcus blamed Sophia for pushing him to make decisions he wasn't ready for. Within a month of my filing for divorce, they'd broken up acrimoniously. So Marcus lost his wife, his girlfriend, his company, his apartment, and his reputation all at the same time. The divorce proceedings took 8 months, during which time I continued to run Sterling Digital Solutions and grew the company's value by over 30%. Marcus's lawyers tried every trick in the book to minimize his losses, but I had documentation of everything, and the court was not sympathetic to a man who tried to hide assets from his wife. In the final settlement, I received 60% ownership of Sterling Digital Solutions, which I was already running. The penthouse apartment, worth $2.8 million. Half of all legitimate marital assets. All of the money Marcus had tried to hide, which the court ruled was marital property. $15,000 per month in spousal support for 3 years. All legal fees paid by Marcus. Marcus received 40% ownership of Sterling Digital Solutions, but no management role. His personal belongings. A lecture from the judge about the consequences of financial fraud and marital misconduct. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was watching Marcus realize that the woman he'd thought was a naive about business he had outmaneuvered him at every turn using skills and connections he never knew I had. At the final divorce hearing, Marcus looked across the courtroom at me and said, "I never knew you were capable of this." I looked back at him and replied, "You never bothered to find out who I really was. That was your first mistake." The aftermath was even better than the revenge itself. Sterling Digital Solutions continued to thrive under my leadership. I rebranded the company as Sterling Legal Tech Solutions, focusing on technology solutions for law firms and legal departments. Within 2 years, the company was worth over $15 million, and I was being featured in business magazines as one of the top female entrepreneurs in New York. Marcus tried to start a new company, but his reputation in the industry was ruined. The investors who'd lost money because of his deception made sure that everyone in the New York tech community knew what kind of person he was. He eventually moved to Atlanta and started working for someone else's company at a fraction of his previous salary. Sophia never recovered professionally from the scandal. She ended up leaving law entirely and now sells real estate in New Jersey. She's tried to contact me several times over the years to make things right, but I've never responded. Some betrayals are unforgivable, and hers was one of them. As for me, I'm thriving. The company is more successful than ever. I'm engaged to a wonderful man who's also a lawyer, someone who understands and respects my intelligence and ambition. We have a partnership based on mutual respect and complete honesty, everything my marriage to Marcus wasn't. I still live in the penthouse apartment, though I've completely redecorated it. Every trace of Marcus is gone, replaced with art and furniture that reflects my own taste rather than his idea of what looked expensive. Sometimes people ask me if I feel guilty about what I did to Marcus, if I think I went too far in my revenge. The answer is no. Not for 1 second. Marcus didn't just cheat on me. He didn't just have an affair. He systematically planned to destroy my financial future while mocking my intelligence behind my back. He enlisted my best friend in a campaign to humiliate and impoverish me. He stole from our joint assets and lied to business partners, putting other people's investments at risk. He made the choice to betray me in every possible way. I simply made the choice to protect myself and to ensure that actions have consequences. The beautiful irony is that Marcus always said I was too emotional and too trusting to succeed in business. He thought my legal career was cute but not serious, that I'd never be as successful as him because I cared too much about ethics and fairness. He was wrong about that, just like he was wrong about everything else. The truth is, caring about ethics and fairness doesn't make you weak in business. It makes you stronger. It means you build real relationships based on trust and mutual respect. It means people want to work with you because they know you'll treat them honestly. It means when someone tries to destroy you, you have the skills and the support network to fight back. Marcus thought he was playing a game where the smartest, most ruthless person wins. But he wasn't smart enough to realize that the most successful people aren't those who betray others. They're those who inspire loyalty and respect. I didn't win because I was more ruthless than Marcus. I won because I was more strategic, more prepared, and ultimately more ethical. I used the law to protect myself and others from his fraud. I used my business skills to save a company that he was destroying with his greed. I used my intelligence to outmaneuver someone who'd underestimated me. And yes, I enjoyed every minute of it. There's something deeply satisfying about proving someone wrong when they've tried to make you feel small. There's something powerful about taking control of your own story when someone else has been writing it behind your back. Marcus thought he was going to write the story of our marriage, the successful businessman who outgrew his naive wife and moved on to someone better. Instead, I wrote the story of the brilliant woman who turned the tables on the man who underestimated her. The best revenge isn't just getting even. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so fulfilled that your betrayer's life looks pathetic in comparison. It's not just surviving their attempt to destroy you, it's thriving beyond their wildest dreams. That's exactly what I did. And I'm still doing it every single day. Marcus wanted to leave me with nothing. Instead, he gave me everything: the motivation to discover my own strength, the opportunity to build something amazing on my own terms, and the satisfaction of knowing that I'm capable of overcoming anything. So thank you, Marcus. Thank you for showing me who you really were before I wasted any more years of my life on you. Thank you for underestimating me so completely that you made tactical errors a first-year law student would have avoided. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove to myself and everyone else that I'm stronger, smarter, and more resilient than even I knew. The woman you thought was too naive to see through your lies became the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company. The woman you thought was too emotional to succeed in business is now one of the most respected entrepreneurs in New York. The woman you thought you could manipulate and control became the architect of your complete professional and personal downfall. And the best part? I'm just getting started. Sterling Legal Tech Solutions is expanding into 3 new markets next year. I'm being courted by investors who want to help me launch additional companies. I'm speaking at conferences about women's entrepreneurship and the importance of financial literacy in relationships. Meanwhile, Marcus is still living with his mother and working for someone else's company, probably telling anyone who'll listen about how his crazy ex-wife had destroyed his life. But here's what he'll never understand: I didn't destroy his life. He destroyed his own life the moment he decided that betraying me was more important than honoring the promises he made. I just made sure he faced the consequences of his choices. That's not revenge. That's justice. And justice, as it turns out, is the most satisfying revenge of all. Looking back now, 3 years later, I can honestly say that discovering Marcus's betrayal was the best thing that ever happened to me. It forced me to discover strengths I didn't know I had, to build a life that's completely my own, and to understand that I don't need anyone else to validate my worth or secure my future. I'm successful because I'm intelligent, hardworking, and ethical. I'm happy because I'm with someone who appreciates those qualities rather than trying to diminish them. I'm fulfilled because I'm building something meaningful that helps other people and creates value in the world. None of that would have happened if I'd stayed married to Marcus, gradually allowing him to undermine my confidence and steal my assets while I focused on being the perfect supportive wife. So in a strange way, I'm grateful to Marcus for his betrayal. He set me free to become the person I was always meant to be. He just never imagined that person would be powerful enough to completely dismantle the life he built on lies and deception. The moral of this story isn't that you should seek revenge when someone betrays you. The moral is that you should never underestimate the quiet strength of someone you think you can manipulate, and you should never assume that being cruel makes you clever. Marcus thought he was smarter than me because he was willing to lie, cheat, and steal. But real intelligence isn't about being the most ruthless person in the room. It's about understanding people, building genuine relationships, and creating value that lasts. That's the difference between someone who builds an empire and someone who burns their own life down trying to take shortcuts. I built an empire. Marcus is still trying to figure out how he lost everything. And that, my friends, is what real victory looks like. 3 years ago, Marcus Sterling thought he was going to write the story of how he outsmarted his naive wife and built a successful life with his true love. Instead, I wrote the story of how Victoria Sterling became one of the most successful women in New York by turning her husband's betrayal into the foundation of her own empire. His story ended with him moving back in with his mother. My story is just beginning. And I'm writing every chapter exactly the way I want it to go.